My parents said they were too tired to attend my graduation, but when I saw them at a spa with my sister, what I did next left them speechless. I'm Lauren Carter, 22 years old, and today's valedictorian. I've spent 4 years pulling all-nighters, maintaining a perfect GPA, and working 2 jobs to pay for my biomedical engineering degree. This morning should have been perfect. Instead, I'm staring at my phone, reading the text from my parents. Sorry, honey. We're too tired from the business trip. Won't make it today. My stomach drops as I keep scrolling through Instagram, only to freeze at the fresh post from my mother. There they are, smiling with my sister, Cassandra, champagne glasses raised at some fancy spa. Relaxation day with our beautiful girl, the caption reads. Growing up in our middle-class suburban home in Grand Rapids, Michigan, I always knew where I stood in the family hierarchy. My parents, Michael and Diana Carter, never bothered to hide their preference for my older sister, Cassandra. Our house wasn't particularly large, a modest 4-bedroom colonial with fading blue paint and a creaking porch swing where I spent countless hours reading alone. Inside, my parents fawned over whatever new achievement Cassandra had accomplished. The first memory I have of realizing I was second best came on my 7th birthday. My parents had promised a small party at the local skating rink. I'd invited 5 friends and was beyond excited. The morning of my birthday, Cassandra, then 12, announced she'd been invited to an impromptu audition for a local commercial. Just like that, my birthday plans evaporated. We'll celebrate next weekend, Lauren, my father said, barely looking at my devastated face as he grabbed the car keys. They never rescheduled. This pattern repeated throughout my childhood. My straight-A report card would be glanced at and placed on the refrigerator, only to be covered by Cassandra's B- artwork the very same day. When I won the regional science fair in 8th grade, my parents couldn't attend because Cassandra had a minor role in the school play. You understand, right, Lauren? Your sister needs our support. You're so independent anyway, my mother would say, as if my self-sufficiency was a reason to neglect me rather than a skill I developed out of necessity. Cassandra fit the mold my parents valued. She was conventionally beautiful, with her perfect blonde hair and bright blue eyes that matched our mother's. She was sociable and popular, always surrounded by friends and admirers. She pursued fashion design, which delighted our mother, who had once harbored similar ambitions. They'd spend weekends shopping together, giggling over coffee, sharing the bond one desperately craved. I was different from the start. My dark auburn hair and serious green eyes marked me as the odd one out physically. While not unattractive, I lacked Cassandra's effortless beauty and social grace. I found solace in books and laboratories, developing a passion for understanding how things worked. By high school, I had set my sights on biomedical engineering, fascinated by the potential to develop technologies that could save lives. My academic focus became my identity and, I hoped, my ticket to finally earning my parents' approval. I studied relentlessly, staying up until 3 in the morning to ensure every assignment was perfect. I joined every academic club, volunteered at the hospital, and worked part-time at the local pharmacy to build my resume. The exhaustion was worth it, I thought, if it would finally make them see me. In my junior year of high school, I was named a National Merit Scholar finalist. The ceremony was on a Thursday evening. I reminded my parents weeks in advance, even marking it on the kitchen calendar. That evening, I sat alone in the school auditorium, watching other finalists receive hugs and flowers from their proud families. My parents had taken Cassandra shopping for her prom dress, despite having 6 more weeks until the event. When I arrived home, clutching my certificate, my mother said, "Oh, was that tonight?" "I'm sorry, honey, but you know how important prom is to your sister." I stopped expecting them to show up after that, but I never stopped hoping they would. Each achievement became another attempt to prove my worth. Each disappointment hardened something inside me. But still, I persisted, clinging to the childish belief that if I just accomplished enough, they would finally love me as much as they loved Cassandra. When my acceptance letter to the prestigious Johns Hopkins medical program arrived in my senior year of college, I drove 2 hours home to share the news in person. I'd been selected from thousands of applicants with a partial scholarship that recognized my research on synthetic tissue regeneration. I imagined a celebration, perhaps even tears of pride. Instead, I was greeted with distracted congratulations. "That's nice, sweetie," my father said, eyes never leaving the television. My mother at least hugged me but quickly turned the conversation to Cassandra's new boyfriend, a promising young man from an excellent family. The acceptance letter was tucked into my purse, my excitement deflated like a punctured balloon. I drove back to campus that same night, stopping once to cry at a rest area before pulling myself together and continuing on. That's when I truly accepted that nothing would ever be enough. No achievement would ever make them see me the way they saw Cassandra. But by then, graduation was approaching, and I had one final chance to make them proud. I had been named valedictorian, the highest academic honor. Surely, they would attend this milestone. Surely, this time would be different. The weeks leading up to graduation were a blur of exhaustion and anticipation. As valedictorian, I was responsible for delivering a speech that would inspire my classmates and honor our collective achievements. I spent countless late nights at my small desk in my off-campus apartment, surrounded by crumpled drafts as I tried to craft the perfect message. Between finalizing research papers, completing final exams, and preparing to move for my medical program, sleep became a luxury I couldn't afford. Despite years of disappointment, I couldn't help but hope that my graduation would finally be the moment my parents would show up fully, both physically and emotionally. 2 weeks before the ceremony, I called home specifically to confirm their attendance. "Of course we'll be there, Lauren," my mother said, her voice distracted as I heard her shuffling papers in the background. "We wouldn't miss our daughter's graduation." "I'm speaking as valedictorian," I added, unable to keep the pride from my voice. "They only choose one student from the entire graduating class." "That's wonderful, honey," she replied, sounding marginally more interested. "Your father and I will be in the 4th row, right where you can see us." That promise sustained me through the grueling final days of the semester. I pictured their faces as I practiced my speech in front of the bathroom mirror, imagining my father's rare smile and my mother's approving nod. After 22 years of trying to earn their attention, this would be my moment of vindication. The speech I had written was full of gratitude and optimism, with a special acknowledgement of the parents who had supported us all through our educational journeys. Dr. Jenkins, my research advisor and mentor, offered invaluable feedback on my drafts. A brilliant woman in her 50s with silver-streaked hair and kind eyes behind practical glasses, she had become the supportive adult figure I lacked at home. "This is excellent work, Lauren," she said during our final review session. "But I wonder if it's truly your voice. It feels like you're writing what you think should be said rather than what you want to say." I considered her words carefully. "I want to make everyone proud," I admitted. Dr. Jenkins studied me with her perceptive gaze. "The most powerful speeches come from a place of authenticity. Perhaps consider what message you truly want to leave with your peers." I nodded but kept the original draft. It was safer that way, less vulnerable. I couldn't risk ruining the perfect moment I had constructed in my imagination, where my parents would finally look at me with the same adoration they reserved for Cassandra. The day before graduation, I picked up my carefully selected dress from the dry cleaners, a professional navy blue sheath that made me look older and more accomplished. I visited the salon for the first time in months, splurging on a styling I couldn't really afford. I organized my note cards, packed my cap and gown, and laid everything out meticulously for the following morning. My best friend, Emily, called that evening as I was reviewing my speech one final time. "You ready for tomorrow, superstar?" she asked, her voice warm and excited. Emily had been my roommate sophomore year, and she understood my family dynamic better than anyone. She had witnessed my disappointment firsthand multiple times and had offered her own family as substitute support when mine was absent. "As ready as I'll ever be," I replied, trying to sound confident. "Just nervous about the speech." "You're going to be amazing," she assured me. "Mom and Dad are bringing signs with your face on them just to embarrass you properly." I laughed, genuinely touched by her parents' enthusiasm. "Tell them thank you, but signs are definitely not necessary." "Too late," Emily said cheerfully. "Dad's already laminated them." "Oh, and Mom's bringing her good camera to record your speech. She knows your parents will want a copy." The knot in my stomach tightened. Speaking of which, I should call them to confirm the details for tomorrow. After saying goodbye to Emily, I dialed my parents' number, rehearsing in my head what I would say. The phone rang 4 times before my father answered with a distracted, "Hello." "Hi, Dad. It's Lauren. I just wanted to make sure you have all the information for tomorrow. The ceremony starts at 10, but family should arrive by 9:30 to get good seats." Right, he said vaguely. "The graduation thing." My heart sank at his tone. "Yes, Dad. My college graduation. I'm valedictorian. Remember?" "Of course I remember," he said, sounding slightly annoyed. "Your mother has it on the calendar. We'll be there." "Great," I said, trying to keep the uncertainty from my voice. "I'll text you the parking information. There's a special lot for families of graduates." "Fine," he replied. "Is that all?" "We're just walking out the door for dinner." "Yes, that's all," I said quietly. "See you tomorrow." "Good night," he said, and hung up before I could respond. I stared at the phone in my hand, trying to ignore the familiar feeling of being an afterthought. They would be there tomorrow, I told myself firmly. They had promised. This time would be different. I woke before my alarm on graduation day, sunlight barely filtering through my curtains. Despite my nervous stomach and the fatigue of too many late nights, excitement hummed through me as I moved around my apartment. This was it, years of work culminating in one perfect day. I showered and carefully applied makeup, taking extra time to ensure everything was flawless. I styled my hair the way the salon had shown me, pinned my cap securely, and slipped into my dress. Standing before the mirror, I took several photos of myself with my phone. No one was there to capture the moment for me, but I was determined to document it anyway. As I was gathering my notes and gown, my phone chimed with a text message. My heart leapt, assuming it was my parents confirming they were on their way. Instead, what I read made my blood run cold. "Lauren, something's come up. Dad and I are exhausted from the business trip that ran late last night. We won't be able to make the drive up this morning. So sorry, honey. Take lots of pictures. Love you." I read the message 3 times, unable to process the words. They weren't coming. After all the promises, all the reminders, all the years of work, they simply weren't coming. I sank onto the edge of my bed, still clutching my phone, a strange numbness spreading through me. When the numbness cracked, the pain that flooded in was overwhelming. I stumbled to the bathroom, slid down against the cool tile wall, and finally let the tears come, deep, wrenching sobs that shook my entire body. I had been so sure that this time would be different, so certain that becoming valedictorian would finally be enough to make them show up for me. After 10 minutes of unrestrained crying, my phone rang. I wiped my eyes and saw Emily's name on the screen. "Hello," I answered, unable to completely hide the thickness in my voice. "Lauren, what's wrong? Are you okay?" Emily's concern was immediate. "They're not coming," I said simply, fresh tears threatening. "My parents. They just texted that they're too tired from their business trip." "Those absolute jerks," Emily exclaimed, outrage clear in her tone. "After everything you've done, they can't drive 2 hours to see you graduate at the top of your class?" "Guess not," I said, trying for a light tone and failing miserably. "Listen to me," Emily said firmly. "This is still your day. You've worked too hard to let them ruin it. My parents will record everything, and we'll celebrate after. You deserve this moment, with or without them." Her words penetrated the fog of disappointment. She was right. I had earned this achievement entirely on my own. Perhaps it was fitting that I would accept it the same way. "You're right," I said, standing up and looking at my reflection. My eyes were red and puffy, but nothing a cold compress and some additional makeup couldn't fix. "I'll see you there." After repairing my appearance, I gathered my things and headed to the ceremony venue. The campus was transformed for the occasion, with proud families taking photos of graduates in every picturesque spot. I navigated through the crowd, trying not to notice how alone I was among the clusters of supportive relatives. In the preparation area, I joined my fellow graduates, accepting congratulations and exchanging nervous smiles. As we waited, I absently scrolled through social media on my phone, a habit born of anxiety. That's when I saw it, posted just 20 minutes ago, a photo of my parents with Cassandra, all three smiling broadly at an upscale spa. My mother's caption read, "Much needed relaxation day with our beautiful girl. Nothing more important than family time." The betrayal hit me like a physical blow. They weren't too tired. They weren't recovering from a business trip. They had chosen, deliberately and consciously, to spend the day pampering my sister instead of witnessing the culmination of my academic career. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. The naked truth of their preference had never been so blatantly displayed. All these years, I had made excuses for them, telling myself they were busy or distracted or simply didn't understand the importance of my achievements. Now, there was no more room for denial. They understood perfectly well. They just didn't care. As the initial shock faded, something shifted inside me. The hurt remained, a deep ache in my chest, but alongside it rose a new emotion, anger. Pure, clarifying anger that burned away the fog of perpetual disappointment I had lived in for as long as I could remember. In that moment, sitting among my peers as we prepared to celebrate our achievements, I made a decision. I pulled out my carefully prepared speech, the one designed to make my absent parents proud, and I began to revise it. The words flowed easily now, honest and raw in a way they hadn't been before. By the time we were called to line up for the processional, I had a completely different speech in my hands, one that spoke my truth rather than seeking approval I would never receive. As I took my place at the front of the line, I felt strangely calm. Today would still be a turning point, just not the one I had imagined. Instead of finally earning my parents' love, I would finally stop trying. The graduation ceremony proceeded with all the pomp and tradition such occasions demand. We filed into the grand auditorium to the sounds of pomp and circumstance, took our seats in neat rows, and settled in for the series of speeches from university officials. Throughout it all, I sat with perfect posture, my revised speech clutched in my hands, occasionally scanning the audience, even though I knew my parents weren't there. I did spot Emily and her family, seated prominently with their promised signs and camera ready. Her mother gave me an encouraging thumbs up when our eyes met, and despite everything, I felt a surge of gratitude for their unwavering support. As the university president approached the podium to introduce me, my heart began to race. This was the moment I had worked toward for 4 years. Yet, it felt entirely different than I had imagined. The president's voice echoed through the auditorium, listing my accomplishments with obvious pride: a perfect GPA, published research, community service, leadership positions, and acceptance to Johns Hopkins Medical School. Each achievement represented countless hours of work, all originally fueled by the desperate hope of parental approval. "It is my great honor to present this year's valedictorian, Miss Lauren Carter," the president concluded, gesturing toward me with an outstretched hand. The applause was enthusiastic as I rose from my seat and made my way to the stage. My legs felt surprisingly steady as I climbed the steps and took my place behind the podium. Looking out at the sea of faces, I saw strangers beaming with pride for their own graduates. I saw professors who had guided me. I saw friends who had supported me. The absence of my parents was a palpable void, but no longer a crushing one. My gaze found Emily's mother, who was recording as promised. I knew that, despite everything, my parents would eventually see this speech. Cassandra would show them, or a relative would send the link, curious about their reaction. The knowledge steadied me further. Distinguished faculty, honored guests, and class of 2023, I began, my voice clear and strong. We gathered today at a threshold, looking back at who we were when we started this journey, and forward to who we might become. I set aside my prepared notes, the words I had memorized now flowing naturally. The path that brought each of us to this moment is unique. Some of us were carried here on the shoulders of unwavering support. Others had to forge our own way, learning early that achievement is often a solitary journey. I paused, making eye contact with various members of the audience. What unites us is perseverance, the capacity to continue moving forward even when the path is difficult, even when those we hoped would walk beside us choose a different route. A ripple of reaction moved through the crowd as they sensed this was not the standard valedictorian fare. I stand before you today as someone who learned that external validation is a poor foundation for self-worth. For too long, I measured my value through others' eyes, particularly those who could never see me clearly. My voice grew stronger, emotion lending it resonance rather than weakness. Today, I celebrate not just what I've accomplished, but who I've become in the process, someone who no longer needs permission to recognize her own worth, someone who understands that sometimes the people we most want to witness our journey are unable or unwilling to do so. I looked directly into the camera Emily's mother held, knowing my next words would eventually reach my parents. To everyone who showed up today, thank you for recognizing the importance of bearing witness to achievement. Your presence is a gift that will be remembered long after the diplomas have been framed. I took a deep breath for the most important part. And to everyone who didn't show up, for whatever reason, I said, my gaze steady and unflinching, this one's for you, because in your absence, I found my own strength. I learned that I am enough, exactly as I am, whether or not anyone else recognizes it. A murmur ran through the audience, followed by the beginning of applause. I raised a hand slightly, indicating I wasn't finished. Class of 2023, as we move forward from this place, I hope you carry with you the knowledge that your worth is inherent. It exists independently of recognition or approval. The most important validation comes from within. I smiled then, genuine and free in a way I hadn't felt in years. Congratulations to all of us. Whatever comes next, we've proven we have the resilience to face it. Thank you. The applause began slowly, then built to a crescendo. People rose to their feet, first a few, then entire sections, until the whole auditorium was standing. The ovation continued as I made my way back to my seat, professors nodding approvingly, fellow graduates reaching to touch my arm or shoulder as I passed. In that moment, I felt a shift within myself, fundamental and irrevocable. For the first time in my life, I wasn't performing for an audience that would never appreciate the show. I was simply and authentically myself, and somehow, that was enough to bring a room full of strangers to their feet. As I sat down, a profound sense of peace settled over me. Whatever happened next with my family, I had claimed this moment for myself, and no one could take that away. The ceremony concluded with the traditional tossing of caps and an explosion of cheers. I moved through the crowd of celebrating graduates, accepting congratulations and well wishes from classmates, many of whom had never spoken to me before my speech. There was a new respect in their eyes, a recognition that went beyond academic achievement. Dr. Jenkins found me among the throng, her eyes suspiciously bright behind her glasses. That, she said, gripping my shoulders firmly, was the most honest valedictorian speech I've heard in 30 years of teaching. I'm incredibly proud of you, Lauren, not just for your accomplishments, but for your courage. Her words touched me deeply. This was the maternal pride I had sought for so long, offered freely by someone who truly saw me. Emily and her family surrounded me next, her father insisting on photos with their embarrassing signs, her mother hugging me tightly. We recorded everything, she assured me. And we've made dinner reservations to celebrate. No arguments, we're taking you out. I surrendered to their kindness, allowing myself to be shepherded to a local restaurant where they ordered champagne and toasted my success. My phone remained conspicuously silent throughout the meal. No congratulatory messages from my parents or sister appeared. It wasn't until I returned to my apartment, pleasantly tired and slightly buzzed from champagne, that I saw the notifications: 3 missed calls from my mother, 2 from my father, and several text messages, all sent within the last hour. What were you thinking with that speech? You've embarrassed the entire family. Call us immediately. I set the phone aside without responding, a small act of defiance that felt enormously significant. For once, I wasn't rushing to explain or apologize or make things right. Their feelings about my speech were their own to manage. I was hanging up my graduation gown when a pounding at my door startled me. Through the peephole, I saw Cassandra, her perfect features contorted with anger. Steeling myself, I opened the door. What the hell was that? She demanded, pushing past me into the apartment without waiting for an invitation. Her hair was still perfectly styled from the spa, her designer outfit immaculate. Do you have any idea how upset Mom and Dad are right now? Hello to you too, Cassandra, I said, closing the door calmly. Congratulations on your spa day. It looked relaxing. She spun to face me, cheeks flushed with indignation. Don't be petty, Lauren. So, they missed one event. Big deal. Did you have to publicly humiliate them in front of everyone? I didn't name them, I pointed out. I didn't even specifically say they weren't there. I spoke my truth, which is that I've spent my entire life seeking validation from people who were never going to give it. That's ridiculous, Cassandra exclaimed. Mom and Dad have always supported you. Have they? I asked quietly. When? Give me examples, Cassandra. When have they ever put me first, or even equal to you? They paid for your college, she shot back. They paid the same amount they paid for yours, I corrected. The rest came from scholarships I earned and jobs I worked while maintaining a perfect GPA, jobs I wouldn't have needed if they'd given me the same financial support they gave you for your fashion program. Cassandra rolled her eyes. Here we go with the martyr routine. Poor Lauren, always overlooked. Something in me snapped at her dismissal. Years of silently accepting my place erupted in a calm, detailed inventory of exactly how different our childhoods had been. They missed my 7th birthday party for your commercial audition. They skipped my National Merit Scholar ceremony for your prom dress shopping, 6 weeks before prom. When I got into the most prestigious medical program in the country, Dad didn't even look up from the television. I took a step toward her, my voice still measured but intense. They attended every single one of your fashion shows but couldn't make time for my research presentation that won a national award. They helped you move into every apartment you've ever had, while I packed and unpacked alone. They call you just to chat, but I only hear from them when they need something or when I initiate contact. Cassandra's expression had changed, her anger giving way to uncertainty. Today, they told me they were too tired from a business trip to attend my graduation, where I was being honored as valedictorian. Then they posted pictures at a spa with you, proving that was a lie. They didn't even try to hide it, Cassandra. That's how little they thought of my feelings or my achievement. My sister sank onto my couch, the righteous indignation draining from her posture. I didn't know they told you they couldn't come because they were tired, she said quietly. They just said they wanted to treat me before my Fashion Week presentation next month. Of course they did, I said, not unkindly. They've never wanted you to see the disparity in how they treat us. That would require them to acknowledge it. Cassandra looked up at me, her eyes troubled. Have they really been that bad? Yes, I said simply. And I've spent my entire life trying to earn the love they give you freely. Today, I finally realized that's never going to happen, and I need to stop trying. Silence fell between us, heavy with years of unspoken truths. Cassandra seemed to be processing, reevaluating countless memories through this new lens. I'm sorry, she finally said, her voice small. I never saw it. I never even looked for it. Why would you? I asked, sitting beside her. You were getting what you needed. That's not your fault. But I should have noticed, she insisted, tears forming in her eyes. I'm your sister. I should have seen how they treated you. I shrugged, suddenly exhausted. Maybe, but they're the parents. The responsibility was theirs, not yours. Cassandra wiped at her eyes, smearing her perfect makeup. What happens now? Now, I said, I stop orienting my life around winning their approval. I focus on my medical program and building a life that fulfills me, whether or not they ever truly see me. My sister nodded slowly, then stood. I should go. I told them I was just running to the store. She paused at the door. For what it's worth, Lauren, I am proud of you. I always have been, even if I didn't show it well. I nodded, accepting her words for what they were, a beginning, not a resolution. Thank you for coming, even if it was to yell at me. Cassandra gave a watery laugh. Your speech really was amazing. Brutally honest, but amazing. After she left, I stood in the center of my apartment, surrounded by the trappings of my achievement, my honors cords, my graduation cap, the framed acceptance letter to Johns Hopkins. For the first time, I looked at them not as attempts to earn love, but as testaments to my own determination and ability. They were enough. I was enough. And that realization, painful as its birth had been, felt like true freedom. The days following graduation were a storm of emotional turbulence. My parents' calls and messages continued, growing increasingly demanding when I didn't immediately respond. When I finally answered my mother's call 3 days after the ceremony, her voice was tight with controlled anger. "We need to discuss your behavior at graduation," she said without preamble. "Your father and I are extremely disappointed." "I'm sorry you feel that way," I replied, the script I'd practiced in my head helping me maintain composure. "I spoke honestly about my experience." "You humiliated us publicly," she countered. "Everyone is talking about it." Mrs. Peterson called to ask if we were having family problems. I almost laughed at the irony. "And what did you tell her?" "That you were being dramatic, of course," my mother said. "That we've always supported you, and you chose to twist things for attention." The accusation stung, but not as deeply as it once would have. "That's not true, Mom, and I think you know it. But I didn't call you out by name, and I won't do so now. My speech was about my journey, not about punishing you and Dad." "We deserve an apology," she insisted. I took a deep breath. "I'm not going to apologize for speaking my truth. What I will say is this: I'm setting a boundary. I won't engage in conversations that dismiss my feelings or experiences. If you want to have a relationship with me moving forward, it needs to be based on mutual respect." The silence that followed was profound. When my mother spoke again, her voice had chilled considerably. "I don't recognize you anymore, Lauren. This isn't how we raised you." "Maybe that's the problem," I said quietly. "Goodbye, Mom. I'm here when you're ready to really talk." I ended the call before she could respond, my hand trembling slightly, but my resolve firm. Setting boundaries with my parents was new territory, simultaneously terrifying and liberating. My father's call came the next day, his approach more stern than my mother's emotional manipulation. "This nonsense has gone on long enough," he said. "Your mother is upset, and frankly, so am I. We've given you everything, and this is how you repay us." "Dad," I interrupted, "can you name 3 events from my academic career that you attended?" "Just 3. His hesitation spoke volumes. "That's not fair, Lauren. We were busy building the life you enjoyed." "I lived that life, Dad. I know exactly what it was like, and I'm not interested in pretending anymore. Either we can build a healthier relationship moving forward, or we can take some space while you decide if you're willing to acknowledge the reality of our family dynamic." My father's response was to hang up. A reaction that would have devastated me months earlier now only confirmed I was making the right choice. As June turned to July, I threw myself into preparing for my move to Baltimore for the beginning of my medical program. Emily helped me pack my apartment, providing moral support and practical assistance in equal measure. "Have you heard from them?" she asked one afternoon as we wrapped dishes in newspaper. "My parents?" "Not directly," I replied. "Cassandra texts occasionally. I think she's trying to process everything. She mentioned they're telling relatives I'm going through a phase and that they're giving me space to mature." Emily snorted derisively. "Unbelievable. They really can't take any responsibility, can they?" "Apparently not," I agreed, sealing a box with packing tape. "But the weird thing is, I'm okay with that. I'm not waiting for them to validate my experience anymore." It was true. Each day that passed without seeking their approval felt like shedding a layer of constriction I hadn't even realized was there. I slept better. I made decisions based solely on what I wanted, not how they might react. I began to discover aspects of my personality that had been suppressed in my efforts to be the perfect, achievement-oriented daughter they might finally love properly. By mid-July, my mother extended an olive branch in the form of an invitation to dinner at their house. "We miss you," her text read. "Let's put this unpleasantness behind us and move forward as a family." I accepted with clear parameters. I'd like that, but moving forward means acknowledging the past, not pretending it didn't happen. The dinner itself was uncomfortable, the conversation artificially light as we all navigated the new terrain. My parents made no direct reference to my speech or our subsequent conversations, clearly hoping that simply gathering around the same table would reset everything to the familiar dynamic. Cassandra was present but unusually subdued, watching our parents with a new awareness in her eyes. Twice, she redirected the conversation when our mother tried to monopolize it with news of Cassandra's latest achievements. "Actually, I'd love to hear more about Lauren's research," she said pointedly after our mother spent 15 minutes discussing Cassandra's upcoming fashion showcase. "The regenerative tissue work sounds fascinating." The look of surprise on our parents' faces might have been comical under different circumstances. They had no framework for engaging with my academic interests beyond surface platitudes. As the evening concluded without any meaningful resolution, I realized that true reconciliation would take far more time and willingness than a single dinner could provide. My parents were not yet ready to see the pattern, much less acknowledge their part in creating it. The following week, I received an offer for a specialized research track within my program, requiring an immediate move to Baltimore for summer preparation. It meant missing the family's annual Labor Day gathering at our grandparents' lake house, an event that had always highlighted the disparate treatment between Cassandra and me. In previous years, I would have declined the opportunity to avoid disappointing my parents. This time, I accepted without hesitation, informing them of my decision rather than asking for their blessing. "But it's tradition," my mother protested during our phone call. "Everyone will be asking where you are." "I'm sure you'll manage to explain my absence," I replied calmly. "This opportunity is important for my career, and I'm taking it." The silence that followed was heavy with the recognition that our relationship had fundamentally changed. I was no longer the compliant daughter, desperate for scraps of approval. Before I left Michigan, Cassandra visited my nearly empty apartment, bringing coffee and an awkward determination to connect. "I'd been thinking a lot about what you said," she admitted, perched on a packing box since my furniture had already been sold, about how different our experiences were growing up. "I started making a list of all the events in my life that Mom and Dad attended, and then tried to remember if they went to your equivalent moments." She looked up, genuine distress in her eyes. "The disparity is staggering, Lauren. I never saw it before, but now I can't unsee it. What will you do with that awareness?" I asked, genuinely curious rather than accusatory. Cassandra sighed. "I don't know yet. I've tried bringing it up with Mom, but she just changes the subject or tells me I'm being influenced by your negativity. But I know what I've seen now, and I'm sorry I was complicit in it for so long." Her apology, unexpected and sincere, touched me deeply. "Thank you," I said simply. "That means a lot." As August arrived and I prepared for my final departure, I made the difficult decision to decline the family's Christmas invitation preemptively. My mother's reaction was predictably dramatic, accusing me of tearing the family apart and holding grudges. I held firm, explaining that I needed time and space to focus on my own well-being. "It's not punishment," I assured her, "but self-preservation. I can't continue pretending that being around you isn't emotionally damaging until real changes occur." That boundary, more than anything else, made clear the transformation I had undergone. The daughter they knew would never have prioritized her own mental health over family harmony. The woman I was becoming understood that sometimes the most loving choice you can make for yourself is to step back from those who cannot see you clearly, even when those people are your parents. 1 year after my graduation, I stood in the atrium of Johns Hopkins Medical Research Center, waiting to receive an award for my work on synthetic tissue regeneration. The past 12 months had been transformative in ways I could never have anticipated. Immersed in challenging work that genuinely excited me, surrounded by colleagues who valued my contributions, I had flourished. My contact with my parents had been minimal, limited to brief phone calls on holidays and the occasional text message. Each interaction was cordial but distant, neither of us quite knowing how to bridge the chasm that had opened between us. I no longer blamed them with the intensity one once had, understanding that they were products of their own upbringings and limitations. But understanding didn't mean accepting the same treatment that had diminished me for so long. As I scanned the gathering crowd, a familiar figure caught my eye. Cassandra, elegant as always but somehow softer around the edges, was making her way toward me. I hadn't expected her to come. I hadn't even told my family about the award, not wanting to set myself up for another disappointment. "Surprise," she said, smiling uncertainly as she reached me. "Dr. Jenkins contacted me. Hope that's okay." "Of course," I replied, genuinely pleased to see her. "But Baltimore is a long way from Michigan just for an afternoon ceremony." Cassandra shrugged. "My little sister is receiving a prestigious award. Where else would I be?" The simple statement, so different from anything I would have heard from her a year ago, brought unexpected tears to my eyes. We had spoken regularly over the past year, our relationship evolving into something more balanced and authentic, but this gesture spoke volumes. After the ceremony, we sat in a quiet corner of the reception, catching up on the months since we'd last seen each other in person. "I've been in therapy," Cassandra confided, turning her water glass between her fingers, trying to understand the family dynamics better and my role in them. "That's brave," I said sincerely. "How's it going?" "Painful," she admitted with a wry smile, "but necessary. I've learned a lot about myself and about Mom and Dad, about how they recreated patterns from their own childhoods without even realizing it." I nodded, having come to similar conclusions through my own therapy. "And how are things between you and them?" "Different," Cassandra said thoughtfully. "I've been setting boundaries, too, calling them out when they try to put you down or dismiss your achievements. It hasn't made me popular." I squeezed her hand, deeply moved by her willingness to advocate for me in my absence. "Thank you for that. It can't be easy." "It's not," she agreed, "but it's right. And surprisingly, I think it's making a difference." They've started to reflect a little, especially Dad. He asked me last month if I thought they had favored me growing up. The revelation startled me. "What did you say?" "The truth," Cassandra replied simply, "that they absolutely did, consistently and significantly, that they gave me emotional support and attention they withheld from you, that they celebrated my minor achievements while ignoring your major ones." I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. "And his reaction?" "He was quiet for a long time," she said. "Then he said something that surprised me. 'I think we owe your sister an apology.'" The words hit me with unexpected force. After a lifetime of having my experiences minimized or denied, the simple acknowledgement was powerful. "Do you think he meant it?" "I do," Cassandra nodded. "Whether Mom's on the same page, I'm less sure, but they've been having their own conversations, and I think they miss you, in their way." 2 weeks later, I received an email from my father, a lengthy, reflective message that must have taken considerable effort to compose. He wrote of his own childhood with critical, withholding parents and how he had unconsciously sought validation through Cassandra, who reminded him of himself. He acknowledged specific instances when he had failed me, moments I had mentioned in conversations with Cassandra that she had clearly relayed. "None of this excuses the pain we caused you," he wrote toward the end. "But I hope it helps you understand that it wasn't because you were unworthy of our love and attention. The failure was ours, not yours. If you're willing, I would like the chance to build a healthier relationship with my remarkable younger daughter." My mother's journey to acknowledgement took longer. It wasn't until 3 months after my father's email that she called me, her voice uncharacteristically vulnerable. "I saw a video of you presenting your research," she said. "You were so poised, so articulate, all these brilliant people listening intently to my daughter, and I realized I know almost nothing about this work that's clearly your passion." "It's not too late to learn," I offered cautiously. "I'd like that," she said, "if you're willing to teach me." These tentative steps toward reconciliation were neither quick nor perfect. There were still misunderstandings, moments when old patterns threatened to reassert themselves. But there was also genuine effort on all sides, a willingness to build something new from the ashes of what had been broken. I approached this renewed relationship with cautious optimism, no longer defining myself by their approval but open to the possibility of a connection based on mutual respect rather than conditional love. My worth was no longer tied to their recognition of it, a hard-won freedom that had transformed every aspect of my life. In my second year of the medical program, I began mentoring younger students, particularly those struggling with family expectations or lack of support. Their stories often echoed aspects of my own, and I found profound fulfillment in offering the understanding and validation I had so desperately needed at their age. "How did you get through it?" one particularly bright student asked after sharing her own experiences with dismissive parents. "How did you learn to believe in yourself when the people who should have believed in you first didn't?" I considered the question carefully. I realized that waiting for external validation is giving away your power. Your worth exists independently of anyone's ability to recognize it, even your parents. She nodded slowly, absorbing the words. "But it still hurts." "Yes," I agreed. "It does. That pain doesn't necessarily go away completely, but it stops defining you when you stop trying to earn love that should be freely given." As I spoke the words, I recognized their truth in my own life. The hurt of those early rejections would always be part of my story, but it was no longer the central narrative. I had built a life rich with meaningful work, authentic relationships, and self-acceptance, not despite my parents' failings, but through the strength those challenges had forced me to develop. The journey from desperate validation seeking to genuine self-worth had been painful but necessary. In finding my voice that graduation day, speaking truth to an auditorium of strangers and the camera that would eventually show my parents what they had missed, I had begun the process of becoming fully myself. Today, as I look toward my future in medical research, I no longer make choices based on what might finally earn my parents' approval. Instead, I follow my own curiosity, passion, and values. I maintain boundaries that protect my well-being while remaining open to the evolving relationship with my family. I recognize that their limitations were never a reflection of my worth.